to give an English Dhamma talk. Maybe we'll get to hear him one day, huh? Yeah. Okay, so do a short reflection on the Dhamma. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Dutiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. So, nice to see everybody here today, Tuesday, and happy that Venerable Dhamma-Rakkhita could join us. I think Venerable Dhamma-Rakkhita has been at the temple for a couple months now. 2 months? 2 months now, from Sri Lanka. And one of the ways that young monks train is basically by trying to be helpful. Wherever they see something is needed, then they go to that place and try to help. And it's usually the most banal things. You can imagine, it's not like, as a young monk, you don't start trying to, you learn Buddhist philosophy, but when teachers evaluate young monks, they don't tend to evaluate them solely in terms of their knowledge of philosophy. So you don't often, maybe you go to a university, you get like an exam, but the way that the Buddha set up his training was through an apprenticeship. So usually you kind of stay with an actual person, like a teacher, and that person doesn't give you like a grade. It's not like, okay, this semester you got an A, and you can't go to them and argue about your grade and get your grade increased. What they tend to do is just watch you, to see what you're up to. Okay, sometimes they will deliberately put you in situations to see how you react, okay, without saying anything. Sometimes they'll give halfway hints just to see if you picked up on them. So I remember not too long ago, there was a senior monk who was visiting, and I had the opportunity to act as his attendant. And it was in a kind of hall, he did a retreat, and it was in a hall like this. And he came out during the retreat while we were sitting there, and he came out after one of the retreat sessions, and he opened up 2 blinds. And I went and opened up like another 2. I was like, okay, he wants a couple blinds open. And then he went and had his rest. And then later, as came back after the retreat, we were all meditating, and I was thinking, it's getting really hot in this room. And then, this was earlier. I was thinking it's getting really hot. What are we going to do? It's pretty hot. Maybe I should ask them to turn down the temperature. And then, as he came back into the room after his nap, I think it was, instead of going to his cushion, he went over to the blinds and opened every single blind in the thing. In other words, he was trying to hint to me, it's getting too hot, open some blinds. But he never said to me, open the blinds. He just opened 2 blinds. And then after that, I realized this is what he was doing. And then we were sitting and meditating. The room was nice and cool. So, have been happy to see Venerable Dhamma-Rakkhita here. He's a very humble monk, but noticed when first came, I was walking up to the meditation class one day, and I saw him sweeping the stairs down to the little half moon, the half moon wheel? I can't remember the proper name for it. And he was sweeping the stairs, and I don't think anybody told him to do it. And then on Wesak, Children's Wesak, just a couple days ago, Bhante Triratana swept a bunch of dirt into the pile, and Venerable Dhamma-Rakkhita came in, and he noticed there was dirt, and he immediately grabbed a dustpan and bent down so Bhante Triratana could sweep it in. So Bhante Triratana is senior to Bhante Dhammarakita, and so Bhante Dhammarakita behaved in a way that was very inspiring, a very beautiful way, and in a way that points to good standards of training as far as monastic etiquette goes, wherever Bhante Dhammarakita trained. And so this is one of the interesting things about conducting meditation classes. Often in the West, the Western system of education is one where it's competition-based. You have certain grades that you study for. If you pass those grades, then you get a good result. And there's a gradation. And there's usually only so many spots for people to get into whatever job, into whatever college, whatever it may be. And because it's competition-based, because it's merit-based, in Western society, well, not because, this is a function of Western society, it's also merit-based. It's kind of egalitarian. In other words, there's no hierarchy in a sense that because you're born in a certain position, you deserve respect because of your birth. It's more, whoever can get a good job gets respect for that job. Whoever wins the competition gets respect for being the winner of the competition. And everybody starts from a level playing field. So it's a matter of ability. It's a matter of talent. Who gets the top spot? And so Western society is based around this model. The economic system is based around this model. The political system is based around this model. And it's a model of egalitarianism. And this model of egalitarianism has a lot of good things about it. And actually, historically, it came about because some kings often were not behaving, as well as they should. And eventually people had enough and overthrew them and made kings subject to the rule of law. Kings subject to this rule of law. And there used to be divisions in society between the lords, and then you had serfs who were tied to the land, and they were basically like slaves on the land. They couldn't leave. They're basically these kind of people who were always living there. So this egalitarianism came out for good reasons, kind of very beneficial things. Anybody in Canadian, North American societies, wherever the society is, that has these principles, they all have a fair shake at life. They all have a fair shake to get good things in their life. And if they don't get it, ideally, it's because they didn't put forth the effort, not because of where they were born. But the interesting thing about when people come to a Buddhist context, come to Buddhist practice, what you see when you go to the temples is a hierarchy. One of the very first things you see. And actually, this is something very important in the Buddhist teaching. It was so important that before he passed away, it was one of the last things he emphasized. He said, before in the Buddha's lifetime, all the monks used to address each other as friend. So they'd say, friend Sariputta, friend Moggallana. The only one who had a really different name was the Buddha. He was the Buddha, the teacher. They called him the Sasada. He had a bunch of different epithets. But everybody else, they would address each other as friend. And before he passed away, he said, formerly, when I was, the monks used to address each other as friend, but after my passing, the junior monks are to address the senior monk as either Bhante, or there might have been another name. There was another one too, which I can't remember the Pali for. It was basically like Venerable Sir or Lord. And the senior monks are to address the junior monks either as friend or by their name. So immediately there's this hierarchy. It's completely apparent in speech. And then when you watch the monks, they all sit in a line. It's kind of wherever you are in seniority, you sit above the monk who's junior to you. Doesn't matter if that monk is the abbot of the temple. Doesn't matter if he is an arahant. If you are senior to him, you sit above him. And he talks to you like Venerable Sir, and you talk to him like friend. Yeah. But the way that this hierarchy is set up, it's not a hierarchy of what you might call power. So in other words, Venerable Dhammarakita here, he's junior to me, one of the few Sri Lankan monks I've met who's junior to me. I'm almost always the most junior. Some Sri Lankan monks are like, when they're 29, they have 9 reigns, But I ordained when I was 27, so when I was 29, I had 2. So most of the monks here are senior to me. So you notice just now I asked Venerable Dhamma-Rakkhita, can you go turn on the light for me? And he did, generously he did. But if he was senior to me, I would have gotten up and turned the light on myself. But this is not a hierarchy of power, because there's nothing written down that says that Venerable Dhamma-Rakkhita has to do, what I tell him. If he didn't do it, I wouldn't yell or anything like that. I would have just gone and done it myself. But what it would have indicated was that Venerable Dhamma-Rakkhita, in that instance, if he had refused, if he had gotten upset and angry that I asked him to turn on the light, it would indicate that he hadn't been trained well in the Buddha's teachings. Or if he had been trained, then he hadn't picked up on that training appropriately. And what all this comes under is this principle of respect. This principle of respect is something that's immensely important in meditation practice, immensely important in training the mind. So I remember there was a few sessions ago, maybe like 2-3 months ago, this fellow came in one time when I was conducting a meditation class, and I asked if anybody had any questions. And so it was going around, nobody really had any questions. And it came to this guy, and he basically started arguing with everything I'd said about meditation. He's like, I've been meditating for 40 years, what you're talking about is samatha, vipassana is better. And he was going on about samatha and vipassana, and he was saying, the Buddha, what did he say? He said a bunch of stuff. I can't even remember what it was. And in my head, I was thinking, this is not what meditation class is about, I don't come here for the sake of teaching people my superior knowledge. When a meditation class is conducted, when a monk teaches, his duty as teaching the Dhamma is to hope that the people he teaches understand it. That's his duty. May you understand what I'm teaching. May you benefit from it. So in other words, there could be an arahant in the crowd, and you don't know, but it doesn't matter. Wherever they are, they're in that position, and at this moment, as a monk, you're in this position as the teacher. Now, what this kind of attitude of respect does is it makes a person's world bright. This is one of the interesting things about having an attitude of competition. Because when a person has an attitude of competition, if they get to the top of something, then everything else is below them. Nothing tends to be as good as where they are. And so this is what you might tend to notice when there's a lot of competition. People look down on the people who are in positions of authority, kind of disrespect people who are in positions of authority, and tend to think that if they're able to outcompete them in whatever way, that means they're superior. And so they don't owe this respect. So this kind of respect is something very difficult for many Westerners, maybe not so much for Sri Lankans or people who've been born into cultures where this is a very strong characteristic, but many Westerners, this is something difficult to cultivate. It can be very difficult for Westerners to bow to the Buddha. It can be difficult for Westerners to bow to monks. And when Westerners enter the monastery, it can be very difficult to say, yes, I'll turn on the light, Venerable Sir. That can be something very difficult. But as one goes through training oneself in this way, as one goes through paying respects to the people worthy of respect, that's what it says in this kind of chant that we do, that this is one of the highest blessings. What one tends to find is that one's world becomes bright. As one has respect for people, one's world becomes bright. In other words, I'm no longer the very best thing because I have these abilities, these skills. Look at how great these people around me are. Look at how great the Buddha is. Look at how great these opportunities I have are. Hold these things above ourselves, and in doing so, our world becomes bright. What we essentially practice is seeing the amazing things around us. This is one benefit of respect. The other benefit of respect is that when somebody has something to teach us, so in a monastic hierarchy, there's junior monks, there's senior monks. When you pay respects to them, when you think of them as worthy of respect, they feel like teaching you. Whatever knowledge they have, they feel like sharing it with you. And so you get the very best that you can get from them. They give the very best to you, and you give the very best to them. Excuse me. And so this creates a very conducive atmosphere for learning. It's one of the reasons why the Buddha founded this sasana on respect, on these relationships on respect, because all these things get given away for free. So when monks teach, when lay people come to the temple, nobody coerces them to do that. There's no kind of charge at the door to a temple. You come into the temple, it's free. Monks teach, it's free. And where the benefit comes from is in one's own mind. In doing these things for a sense of goodness, one gains happiness. And this whole thing is based on this mutual respect, based on this kind of attitude. And one of the other benefits of this is that it generates humility in a person. So can remember, you go through many, many years where you're the most junior person, always at the bottom of the stack, always getting food the last, always saying, yes, Venerable Sir, always cleaning the toilets, always sweeping the leaves, always, giving the senior monk a foot massage, whatever it might be. When the time comes for you to teach as a monk, or when gains come to you as a monk, you don't take that as a sign of your inherent worth. In other words, these gains don't come to me because I'm some amazing, great person. Those are something that I can lose. I can lose them quickly. They can come and go from me immediately. And so the basis of one's mind stays low. Now, when other things are above and oneself is below, then just like something that's low to the ground, when big winds come along, it doesn't tend to pick it up. Something's very low to the ground, if there's a strong wind, it doesn't pick it up and flip it around. When something's very high up, big and high, when winds come, it shakes it. Strong winds come, it bends it. And violent winds come, it breaks it. That's what happens. So in other words, people build this sense of a big ego around their job, a big ego around their physical appearance. They build a sense of an ego, a sense of ownership around their family, around their mental capabilities, around their car, around their life, around the fact of being alive. People build an ego around these things, they become intoxicated by them. Kind of this, you can see this when this kind of happens in a person's mind, in one's own mind, or practicing, something good happens, rush out and grab onto it, this intoxication happens. It's almost like, when people have gotten drunk, they get drunk and their head is all woozy, it's hard to focus. When something good, really amazing happens, you've grabbed onto that, sit down and meditate, the mind won't settle on the meditation object. It just wants to be out in the clouds, woo, having a good time. But the thing about this, going out and reveling, going out and building a big ego around good things that happen, is that this is completely tied, 100% tied, to the pain that people feel when they lose it. To the pain that people feel when whatever they've been grabbing onto just becomes normal, stops being something amazing, and they want something else. So when a person elevates things above themselves, when they have this attitude of respect, these winds of the world tend to shake a person a whole lot less. When you're already low to the ground, wind comes, it doesn't pick you up. When you're humble, you don't build a big ego, lord it up over other people. You don't build a big sense of ownership over good qualities in one's own mind, over one's job, one's car, one's family, one's youth, one's physical appearance, even over one's life. Then one doesn't get intoxicated by these things. One's mind doesn't rush out to them, doesn't revel in them. And what that means is one remains sober. When these things come, one uses them to develop in the Dhamma. When these things go, one doesn't have to sorrow as much. All this is aided by this quality of respect, by this quality of humility. And so this is one of the reasons why this is also said in this kind of sutta, respectfulness and humble. Respect, humility, contentment, gratitude. These are the highest blessings. Because when a person has these things in one's life, a person can be living in very humble circumstances, but their mind can be happy. When one trains one's mind to see the good things, the respectful things, to honor the people worthy of respect, that person's mind slopes. Like you see these kind of ditches they slope towards a ditch. You see a mountain, it slopes this way or that way, and whatever you send rolling on that, it rolls down the slope. And in the same way, when a person has this attitude of respect, their mind slopes towards humility. Their thoughts slope towards humility. Their thoughts tend to slope in the direction of seeing the things that are good in their life. Their thoughts tend to slope in the direction of not being agitated when they lose the things that they love. So in all these ways, this quality of humility is a protection. It's essentially what it is for us. Actually, this word Mangala that we have in this sutta, there's one translator who translates that as protection. Because the Deva says at the beginning, many beings seeking protection, kind of looking for protection. Yeah? They want protection from the dangers in life. And this is a protection against the things that come into our life that we love, against the things that come into our life that we hate. It's a protection for our mind to keep it bright. This being low to the ground is a protection for our mind from the winds that come, that whip things up, that stir things around. It keeps us, when these winds come, from being bent over backwards, from being bent over forwards. And when these winds come, being low to the ground like this helps us to stop from breaking. When very fierce winds come, when the winds of sickness come, when the winds of losing things come, when the winds of old age come, when the winds of death come. When all these winds come, we don't have to get whipped up by them so much. So long as we practice accordingly, so long as we practice so that our mind slopes this way, it slopes towards humility. It slopes towards respect. It slopes towards practicing meditation. It slopes towards the Dhamma. Because, this is what it says, when the mind is untouched, although touched by the ways of the world, the mind remains unshaken. It says that is the highest blessing. And this is one of the true benefits of the Buddha's teachings, that this is something we can know for ourselves. We can know having a mind that remains less shaken when touched by the ways of the world. And we can know a mind that reaches happiness. Happinesses that are low, happinesses that are middle, happinesses that are high, and eventually that reaches a happiness that doesn't change at all. This is the true worth of the Buddha's teaching. And as far as blessings go, as far as protection goes, there's no blessing, no protection that's higher than that.